The Goodreads Choice Awards have just announced their long lists, and I wanted to talk about the 20 books nominated for fiction. I've read 8 of them, and one of them I DNF'd. And of the 8 books that I have read, they vary in quality from good to absolutely amazing. So I thought, it's probably not a bad idea to check out the other 11 books and see which ones sound like they're Scott books. And then I thought, that's a good video to make. So I'm going to tell you my opinion on the 8.5 books that I've read, and then I'm going to summarize the other 11 books that I haven't read, tell you if I'm interested in reading them, and hopefully give you enough information so that you can decide if you're interested in reading them. Blackout by Justin Torres. Probably the most literary sounding novel in the long list, although I haven't read it. A young gay man is looking after an older gay man who is dying. And there are 3 voices in this book, both men, and a third voice, which is the unredacted words in between the blacked out text of the book, Sex Variance, A Study in Homosexual Patterns. The research for that book was done by a woman called Jan Gay, and in the novel, the dying man is called Juan Gay. Simply this description just makes my mind race with metaphors. And I must say, the themes of censorship and LGBT culture seem really relevant to our current world. And this is an excellent sounding book, one that I would be really eager to read. In fact, I'm so eager to read that I did actually check out the audiobook of it. And I will say I will be physically reading this book. And I really do recommend avoiding reading the audiobook because the 3 different voices, they're recorded by 3 different people in the audiobook, and the volume does jump up and down between the 3 different people, making it either really quiet in some sections and really loud in other sections. And honestly, it's a pretty terrible audio production, to be completely honest, but the book sounds fabulous. I'm really interested in that. Big Swiss by Jen Began. One of the books I've read, and I just have to put this one down as a fun, wild ride. Was it my favorite book nominated? No. But did I enjoy reading it? Yes. I always appreciate a book that can both tackle some big themes and not take itself too seriously. It's a very sarcastic novel. Greta works at a transcriptionist for a therapy-cum-sex coach who calls himself Om. Greta becomes obsessed with one of the women Om sees, who she calls Big Swiss on account of her being tall and from Switzerland. She's also really stoic. Big Swiss has this comical German seriousness to her. The interactions between her and Om are hilarious. I cannot imagine Big Swiss feels better in any way from her therapy sessions. One day Greta meets Big Swiss by chance in a dog park, and the 2 become friends and something more, which is a very unprofessional thing to do, I would say. Greta and Big Swiss have this queer romance that is weird and comical. There's also infidelity. This whole situation is quite critical of the patriarchy. Often in these sort of queer feminist novels, there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of trauma. And that's definitely there in this novel. But Began is also presenting how did these people get to be in charge anyway? They're so stupid sort of question. And that question in turn makes her book pretty stupid. But this time I mean stupid as a compliment. It's just a little bit ludicrous. Marmee by Jessica George. Another one that I've read and I really liked. I think if you like Candace Carthy Williams' novel Queenie, this is probably a really good one for you. Maddie is in her mid-20s and still really waiting for her life to start. She spends most of her time looking after her sick father while her mother runs back and forth between London and Ghana, and her brother blows all of his money having a good time. Maddie is a late bloomer. She's never dated and she's decided to move out and to experience the world. I mean, this is very obviously a coming of age novel, but I thought the discussion around mental health and sex really elevated this book. This book is also very feminist, and it discusses cultural differences and racism and parent-child relationships. But all of this comes with this effortlessness when the protagonist is so well realized by the author. The book is depicting the normal struggles that character faces. Of course it's going to be feminist. Of course it's going to discuss cultural differences and racism. Of course it's going to discuss parent-child relationships. But that's not the beginning and end of this novel. Maddie herself is just one of the most instantly and easily likable characters I have read all year. So easy to invest in her, so easy to want the best for her, so easy to just listen to her thoughts and be in her head. I would love to be real life friends with this book character. She's just great. The 5-Star Weekend by Ellen Hildebrand. Hollis Shaw is a middle-aged food blogger. She gets into a fight with her husband, he gets into his car, crashes and kills himself. Hollis then hears about something called the 5-Star Weekend, where a woman organises a trip with her best friends from each stage of her life. Her teens, 20s, 30s and midlife. Hollis organises such a weekend. This is the point where the description teases us by telling us it's not a Hallmark weekend, and we don't really get that much more detail. Two of the friends don't really get along. One friend invites Hollis's old lover. One friend is being cheated on again by her husband. One friend is in hot water for saying something about mental health that has been taken out of context. This is a book about friendship and love. This book looks like a romance, but there does seem to be a real potential for themes of coming to terms with guilt and grief. And that really sounds great, actually. But I'm really worried that a weekend is a way too short a time period to have the character growth needed in a novel like this. So I would be curious to know that if you have read this, does it take place over a weekend, or is the weekend just a central event that allows the characters to begin growing? The Collected Regrets of Clover by Nikki Brammer. Nice to see an Aussie author getting some love on this list. This is about a death doula who is struggling herself. She has always felt a stronger connection to the dying than to the living. She goes to group sessions for grief therapy, but she never goes to the same one, always different ones. When one day she meets a man who offers her a job looking after his grandmother at one of those sessions. But the catch is, the grandmother can't know that she's dying. Through spending time with her, Clover discovers that the grandmother had a lover and it wasn't her husband, and she wants to help her track down him. Meanwhile, the grandson is starting to have feelings towards Clover, and Clover is not sure what she feels back towards him. That's not me saying she's not interested, that's legitimately what it means. Clover is out of touch with her emotions and doesn't know what she feels towards him. This is probably the weakest book that I have read on this shortlist. That's not to say it's a bad book. As I said, worst book is good, the best book is amazing. It's a bit on the feel-good side of things. I mean, on the other hand, it does deal with grief and mental illness. To be fair, it does it in a really accurate way. The balance is quite good. The feel-good happiness isn't allowed to dominate because of the grief and vice versa, but there just wasn't enough gristle and grit for me. The Conleys of County Down, Tracy Lang. So Tracy Lang is the author of We Are the Brennans, which was popular a few years back. Tara Conley is released from prison on drug charges. She is 30, with no money, and she is forced to live with her siblings. Her brother is a single father, and he is struggling with the ongoing effects of a brain injury he sustained a few years ago. Tara's sister is hiding a secret, and the cops who arrested Tara keep following her around and hanging around with her, waiting for her to make a mistake. Can I tell you, sibling relationships, secrets, disability, prisons, the police, ACAB, this sounds fantastic. I'm making this one a priority to read before the end of the year. This sounds exactly like the sort of book I like. If you've read it, let me know in the comments if it's as good as it sounds. The Celebrant by Stephen Rowley. Rowley is best known for his novel The Guncle. This is a novel about a group of friends who graduated together 28 years ago. Now, they haven't seen each other for 5 years, which is the last time they threw each other a living funeral. They do these funerals regularly to remind themselves that life is worth living. It is a pact they made with themselves at university. Morel's marriage has crumbled. Naomi's parents are dead. Craig has pleaded guilty to art fraud, and Jordan is sitting on a secret that will upend the entire pact. This book is about youth and that feeling of invincibility that we all have, and the lasting impact of friendship and how friends help celebrate our lives. I'm not sure about this one, but I have a slight concern. The description of the book mentions 5 people, one of which I haven't told you yet, Geordie. And I really hate books where the author picks similar names. In this case, Jordan and Geordie. There are 4 characters on the back of this book that have something that is going on with them, and Geordie is just listed in the names. And this is like a warning for me, and I'm probably being completely unfair, but I don't think I'm going to read this book because of this. I know that's a wackadoodle reason not to do this, but there are so many books out there. Sometimes any bad reason not to read a book is good enough to get that TBR down to a manageable size. Now, if you've read The Celebrant, let me know your thoughts. Am I being ridiculous? Family Meal, Brian Washington. Brian Washington had the hit Memorial a few years back. Cam is living in LA when the love of his life, Kai, dies. Cam returns to Houston to be with his old friend TJ and dives into a life of unprotected sex, drugs, not eating, and generally being quite destructive. TJ appears to be a steady friend, but he has his own shit to deal with. A lot of the reviews here are talking about the presence of Kai in this novel, the dead former lover, and how he's all through the page, how this is a story of 3 men. That sounds heartbreaking. I've got to say, I'm pretty interested in this book. Grief, queer friendship, self-destructive behavior. This sounds fantastic. The only negative thing about this book is that the queue to borrow this one from the library is massive. Wellness by Nathan Hill. Jack and Elizabeth meet and fall in love in the 90s at college. 20 years later, their parents, trying to navigate things like cults designed as mindfulness support groups, polyamorous would-be suitors, Facebook wars, and who on earth uses Facebook still? For the first time, Jack and Elizabeth struggle to recognize each other. They must face this dysfunctional family they've created. They must deal with unfulfilled career ambitions and painful childhood memories. I'm unsure about this one. I was leaning towards no, but it's got overwhelmingly excellent reviews. That description, it sounds like it's really a lot of sarcasm at woo culture, mixed in with some really gritty, interesting character work. I'm all there for the character work. I often find people picking on woo culture either don't understand it or don't give it a chance. So if you've read Wellness, or even Nathan Hill's first novel, The Nix, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Evil Eye by Etaf Rum. Back into books that I have already read. An American Palestinian woman is beginning to feel unhappy in her life. Having completed an arts degree, she has then gone on to raise 2 children long enough that she is able to begin working part-time again, while still cooking delicious meals and keeping her house spotless. There's lots of delicious Palestinian food in this book. Don't read this book while you're hungry is one bit of advice I'd give you. Yara starts to feel trapped by her life, her marriage. She wants to travel, particularly to Norway, but her husband won't let her. He keeps saying it's not a good time. Money's not an issue. It's just not a good time. Yara starts to question her marriage, her way of life. She calls out racism at her work and in turn is given a warning for being racist. And she starts to have flashbacks to her mother, who is dead, her father who hated her mother, and the evil eye. Yara is slowly realizing that her relationship with the man she loves, despite his faults, is slowly beginning to look like her parents' relationship. And she's realizing how this is trapping her into this life that she does not want. This is a book about how women are controlled by their husbands and their fathers. Domestic abuse. It's very feminist in a very specific Palestinian American way. It is also about mental health. And I love the way the mental health angle is explored in this book. It's very relatable. It also explores healthcare through the employer and the good and the bad aspects of that. Rum is just such a very talented writer. She's really able to balance the light and the dark. And this is just a fantastic novel. Really recommend it. And when I say balance the light and the dark, remember, I'm a bit depressive. This is probably ridiculously sad. Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano. A very loose retelling of Little Women. I would say more Little Women inspired. Some bits are changed, some bits are mashed up, some bits are added. You can see the influence. It's about 4 sisters growing up in Chicago, the tight friendships and relationships they form and the things that can pull a family apart. William Walter grows up in a house where his parents hardly look at him. He loves basketball and Julia Padovano. Julia introduces William to her parents and her 3 sisters, and he's quickly adopted into the Padovano family. Realistically, if you like Little Women, you will like this book. Personally, much like Little Women, I thought this was a good book. I like it. I'm happy I read it, but I don't really feel like singing about it. Good, not great. Shark Heart by Emily Harbeck. A few weeks into Lewis and Wren's marriage, Lewis receives the diagnosis. He will retain his memory, but his physical body will slowly transform into that of a great white shark. Lewis struggles to make peace with his unfulfilled dreams. Wren doesn't accept that this means that they will be apart and that their marriage may be over. Angela became pregnant with Wren when she was 15 and in an abusive relationship. Angela's story is woven in with Lewis and Wren's love story, as two are stories from Wren's past. I'll be honest, I struggle with this one because I can see how this book will be completely heartbreaking and miserable, which is my absolute favourite. But also, this is really clearly magical realism, my least favourite. So if you've read this one, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did you have to glue your heart back together? Did the magical realism stay within the rules it's created? Or was it completely bonkers? Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. Lara's 3 grown-up children return to her orchard to help her pick cherries. They beg Lara to tell them the love story of her past. About Peter Duke, a famous actor, falling in love with Peter Duke, who was not famous when Lara was 24, and the mess that their love left behind. I've not read this one, but I have noticed that the audiobook is narrated by Meryl Streep, and that's kind of a big deal. So maybe this is a good one for people to read on audio. Burnam Wood by Eleanor Catton. One of my favourite reads this year. A bunch of guerrilla gardeners face the ethical dilemma of receiving funding from an Elon Musk type character, and it's all written in the style of a modern day Shakespeare play. Thematically, this book is talking about trying to do good in the world and asking, do the benefits of working with people with money outweigh the cost? It's talking about greenwashing, public face versus the private person we are and the things we do when the media cannot see us. It is critical of the corruptibility of environmentalists. It is critical of the corrupting power of capitalists. And it's really critical of pretty much everybody in between. Plot-wise, this is an absolute corker. It is action-packed. Violence, sex, betrayal. I really love this book. It is proper good trash with this really super intelligent, super relevant topic. So smart. And this doesn't get touched on a lot. One of the best books I've read all year. Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson follows the lives of wealthy 20-something siblings Darlie, Georgiana, and Cord. Georgiana, the baby, is experiencing her first love. Darlie, the oldest, is struggling with the challenges of motherhood. And Cord, the middle, has just moved into his parents' house with his beautiful new wife, Sasha. This is the one book on the list that I DNF'd. It is meant to be a novel that is critical of class. I found it so tone deaf, and I just don't see how you can be so critical of class when you have such wealthy characters. Also, this book is guilty of one of my least favourite things. It is a book that is trying to be humorous, but it missed the mark. Still, this is going to have its fans. It's not me. The Wishing Game by Meg Schaffer, a mega best-selling children's author of the series Clock Island, quits writing. Years later, he resurfaces with a new book, but instead of publishing it, he's holding a contest at his home to decide who will get the only copy. Lucy is a 26-year-old teacher's aide who discovered her love of books thanks to the Clock Island books when she was growing up. And Lucy is one of 4 contestants. Lucy wants nothing more than to adopt Christopher, a 7-year-old student who has been left orphaned after the tragic death of his parents. But Lucy is not in a position to become a family. She must beat 3 wily and ruthless competitors to win the rare book and to change her life. This is labelled fantasy, magical realism, romance. It's really giving me feel-good vibes, happy novel vibes, and it's one I intend to skip, but I'm really sure that this novel has an audience. I'm just not that audience. I'm sure that this will be well loved by a lot of people. Someone Else's Shoes by Jojo Moyes. Nisha Cantor lives a globe-trotting rich life until her husband divorces her and cuts her off. Nisha doesn't even own a pair of shoes. That's because of a mix-up at a gym with somebody called Sam Kemp, a woman struggling to keep her family afloat. That is until Sam tries on Nisha's red 6-inch Louis Vuitton crocodile shoes and gets a sudden spark of confidence. Sam realizes that she needs to change. I've never read Jojo Moyes before. I don't have anything bad to say about her or good to say about her. I'm not sure she's a Scott author. I'm not sure if I will try her. But if I do try her, it'll be a book where reviewers frequently use words such as mess immediately prior to using the word blubbering. This one seems a bit too feel-good for my tastes. The Invisible Hour by Alice Hoffman. Ivy is a young woman with an unplanned pregnancy and the threat of a forced adoption hanging over her head. She runs away from the community she was raised in. Mia is obsessed with Nathaniel Hawthorne and his novel, The Scarlet Letter. Mia realizes that reading can transport you into a new world, quite literally into a new world. She can time travel. Mia discovers that Nathaniel Hawthorne never wrote The Scarlet Letter. This doesn't sound like a book I want to read. It does have lovely witchy vibe and it could potentially be quite feminist. It's reminding me of Audrey Niffenegger, who I certainly don't hate. I actually quite like Audrey Niffenegger, but it's not something that is getting me excited. There are 2 books left. The book that I think will win and my favourite book on the list. Yellowface, R.F. Kuang. I got an ARC for this last year. I read it so long ago. I didn't know how big it was going to be. And it's huge. It's so big. Surely this book is going to win. It's so popular. Also, it's actually quite good. June and Athena are friends. They're both writers. June is unsuccessful. Athena is successful. The 2 women go out one night. In the course of events, a freak pancake related incident kills Athena. I really am making in the course of events do a lot of work in that sentence. Athena had just revealed a script to June, a script nobody has seen. With Athena dead, June takes the script, does a whole heap of edits, gets the work up to a standard that it can be published, and publishes it under her own name. There is the added complication of June being white and Athena being Asian, and the story being a very Asian-focused story. This allows Kuang to explore the publishing industry, the fandom. Even BookTube gets a mention. It's satirical, it's funny, and what I think is the real gift of this book is that it is a political book. And there are a few times that I didn't completely agree with what Kuang was saying. I didn't agree with her commentary. That didn't bother me. Rather than dismissing Kuang or arguing with her, I found myself considering her point of view. And that, I think, is the mark of a very, very good author. This book has the annoying combination of hype and talent to back up the hype. My favourite book on the long list is the book that I hope will win the Booker Prize, Paul Murray's The Bee Sting. The Barnes family own a local car business in the middle of an Irish town. Dickie, who inherits it from his father, isn't really interested in it. Instead, he spends all of his time building a doomsday bunker. Cass is trying to balance being top of her class and trying to get into Trinity College with being perpetually angry at her father and her newest hobby, binge drinking. PJ is consistently online, developing a plan to run away with his new friends. Imelda the mother is my favourite character. Lots of twists and turns in her character arc, and because her story is told with lots of flashbacks from when she was about 15 until the present day when she is about 40, it's hard to tell you what her story is about without spoiling the ride, but trust me, it's a good one. Murray's handling of all 4 of these characters actually is brilliant. He has a real gift for character creation. The storyline is one that just slowly sucks you in. It's that kind of book where you don't realize that you're making excuses to keep reading. Themes, there's so much going on. The role of parents in shaping their children, economic pressures, masking and the pressures to conform and be somebody that you're not, which is where some of the LGBT themes come into it. But it's not just about coming out. It's about learning to be a parent or what you do with your life. It's about love and the different types of love. Trust, blackmail, capitalism, coming of age, control, predatory behavior. Every theme I come up with, I see in every different character in different ways with different ideas. This is a very complex and clever book, and a book that will only get better upon rereading. I would put this in my top 5 books I've read this year, and I've read some really incredible novels. I really struggle to see who wouldn't enjoy this book. It is very intelligent, a great discussion of themes. It is very emotional, great character building, and it is thrilling and fun to read. Just a fantastic plot. A lot of these books I've said it's commercial or it's literary, but this novel, it does everything that good commercial fiction does and everything that good literary fiction does. It's really complete. It's a great all-rounder. Have you read any of the books on the long list? What books are you looking at reading soon? Let me know in the comments. If this video is popular, I will break down the debut novel list and the historical fiction list. So if you would like to see those, hit that like and subscribe button. Finally, I'd really like to thank my wonderful Patreons. If you'd like to join my Patreon book club, this month we're reading Julia by Sandra Newman, a feminist retelling of 1984. Bye bye.